we said last week that we should all identify with it and be able to collectively see what has transpired, what we need to do as we all move forward in love, in caring for one another. And so today we have in our midst a very wonderful friend of mine, a sister of mine, Mrs. Catherine Winslow. And she and I belong to one parish, and so St. Benedict the Moor Parish is the only Black Catholic church parish in the diocese of Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. And today I invited her to come and talk to us about her own perspective on this whole wonderful topic of Black History Month. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my sister to please come along and share with us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what actually made you to even accept our invitation to this platform. And thank you.
You're
Over
welcome.
to you.
Hi, Sister Zeta. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Catherine Winslow, and I am a wife. My husband's name is Gerald. I am a mother of four, a proud mother of four adult children. My oldest is 34 years old and currently is training to be a chief warrant officer for the United States Army. I have my son, Isaiah, my daughter, Maya, and then my youngest is David. As Sister Zeta mentioned, I do attend St. Benedict the Moor Parish, where I've been very active. I'm the head of the women's ministry as well as the head of the lectors. And then I do one of the biggest things that I do that helps to build community is I'm the head, not the head, but I purchase donuts for our coffee hour ministry. And what that does is allow there to be a social aspect after Mass. It helps us to build community, especially coming after COVID. So that is some of the ways that I connect to my community. Again, COVID has been, it's been a really rough time, I find, for the young people. I had two children that were going off I had one son that was going off to college, and there was a lot of isolation. There was a lot of Black Lives Matter that was going on at that time. And so one of the things as a mother that I learned is that it really, the sense of community, having faith was just so essential in getting through that period. And at the end, it is all about finding the value or understanding, making connections with other people, and being concerned, whether we're talking about Ukraine or we're talking about Syria, Turkey, whether we're talking about other nations, other people within the United States and the communities, not having to have things affect you directly in order for you to care about another person. So we are talking about humanity, which I would say as a mother also, and as a woman who gives life, that our whole purpose, there's been so many years of life on this earth. So the purpose that I and you as individuals hold is, what are our responsibilities for the occurrences that are happening in our communities and our family in the current present time? What do we do? How do we discover where our talents and our purpose are in the world? And when we see wrong in the world and it's affecting another population, what do we do about it? What is our response? How do we identify with that if, even though it may not affect, or might be something that happens in my community, when I see it, can I put myself, show empathy to it? So those are some of the things. So with that as a common background, again, I'm just going to come from a place of my lived experience. I am also just going to, we know that Black History Month is a time in which the United States of America recognizes the accomplishments, because sometimes the whole story is not told. And scripture teaches us that, where truth is, that's where we find life, and so I just wanted to paint a pictures of some of the contributions that African Americans have contributed to the United States during this Black History Month. Some models of people who have handled diversity, so that we can have positive images and understandings about the works and the investments that we as a race have contributed, and so that we can celebrate each other's culture, each other's accomplishments, that we can have an image and find our common threads with each other, because we all need the same thing in this world. So again, I start off with February is Black History Month, paying tribute to the generations of African Americans who struggle with adversity to achieve full citizenship in American society. I do not anticipate that my presentation today will highlight anything that you have not already heard. It is my hope that today we can sit together with this body of information, reflect on the lives and the accomplishments of many who came before us, and never limit ourselves to 1 month of learning. So I'll ask you, did you know that the fountain pen, we know how important communication was, uh, was invented by W.P. Purvis. And Mark Dean was the inventor of the color IBM PC monitor and the gigahertz chips. We know how important chips are. Dr. George Grant was the first golf tee, 1899. And I threw that in there because there seems to be sometimes where I think we all move towards or migrate towards certain sports. So everybody thinks basketball, it'll associate football, basketball. But the most important thing for all of us is to find what our personal interests are. And so golfing is not associated with African Americans also, and yet the first golf tee was in 1899, was made by African American. Another thing, the automatic fishing reel was made by George Cook. Charles Drew invented the blood bank during World War II. So you can imagine that there was an exorbitant amount of blood loss, and he invented the blood bank that saves lives to this day. And then Fee Brooks, disposable syringes. George Carver, he made lotions and soap. Dr. Patricia Bath invented cataract surgery. How important is our vision, our sight? How much do we rely on that? Alexander Miles made the automatic elevator doors. Can you imagine having skyscrapers or tall buildings without having an elevator and having the door? So he made the automatic elevator doors. And George Sampson, the clothes dryer, so we no longer have to hand wash and outside hang our clothes. Tom Marshall made the fire extinguisher. Richard Bowie spikes, the automatic gear shift. So we went from the manual shift to the automatic gear shift. Beer tap, directional traffic signals were all made by Richard Bowie spikes. And then we had Lewis Latimer, who made the carbon light bulb filament. So our whole lighting system. And then Frederick Jones made the refrigerated truck. And the printing press was made by W.A. LaVallette. Marie Van Britten Brown made the video home security system. So again, what are the needs of our community and the impact? And when you erase a history and when you don't encourage people to understand what people in the past, all the way back to the 1800s, have contributed to the workings in the world that they live in, we cause harm, and we don't encourage more of that. We need all of us to be whole in order for us to have the best community and society that we can hope to have in our lifetime. We also have Alice Parker, who made the heating furnace, and then the last but not least, J.F. Pickering, who made the blimp. So maybe we can tie the blimp back into football, because we have, over the stadium games, so often we have the blimps, the Goodyear blimps and all the different blimps. So I'll go from that list, and I wanted to talk about some people in history too. And again, it establishes the things that African Americans have contributed through university over the years. So I'm a little bit older. I'll be 50. I'm 58. I'll be 59 this year. Um, I grew up in the history books when civics was taught in American history, and I learned about Shirley Chisholm. And Shirley Chisholm was the first African American woman elected to the U.S. Congress, representing the New York's 12th congressional district. And in 1972, Shirley Chisholm made history again by becoming the first Black woman of a majority party to run for a presidential nomination. She first excelled in school and then in her political career. Shirley came from a low income New York City neighborhood. So again, we are not limited to where we're born. Um, then we have Barbara Jordan. She came from Texas, and she was a state House of Representative in the U.S. from 1972 to 78. And she was the first African American woman to deliver a key address at the Democratic National Convention. Many of us know Rosa Parks. She helped initiate the civil rights movement in the United States and later became one of its primary organizers when she refused to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery, Alabama bus in 1955. Now, before the bus boycott, Rosa Parks was a sexual assault investigator. Rosa Parks was best known for sparking, even though she was best known for sparking that 1955 Montgomery bus boycott, but her activism in the Black community predates the boycott. In 1943, Rosa Parks joined the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And in her first year in the organization, Rosa Parks worked specifically in criminal justice and its application in the Alabama communities. One aspect of this was protecting Black men from false accusations and lynchings. The other was ensuring that Black people who had been sexually assaulted by white people could get their day in court. In 1931, a white male neighbor had attempted to assault her, and Rosa resisted. Later, when she was spoke of the situation, she stated, "I was ready to die, but give my consent? Never, never, never." Mae Jemison was born on October 17, 1956. Mae is an engineer, a physician, and a former NASA astronaut. In September of 1992, Mae became the first Black woman to not space in space, serving as a mission specialist aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour, which orbited the Earth for nearly 8 days. So I'm going to transition to some things in the U.S. history. And again, I'm going to bring a little bit of my background. And again, it shows the society who actually, I'm going to go over, there's some candidates for sainthood within the Catholic Church. And you don't have to be Catholic to appreciate them, but it will tell about the times, it will tell about the talents, the passion that they had, and the differences that they made, the inroads that they made in our community. So again, the following statement was written by Deacon Royce Winters. He's a director of African American Ministries. And he says that in every age and culture, communities have raised up men and women who live saintly lives in the movement of their day. In every continent, the church has canonized men and women to whom we can acknowledge the possibility for everyone to aspire to live as excellent witnesses of God's saving power. The church needs the examples of these 6 candidates in order to celebrate, and I would argue the world needs it, God's active presence in a period of American history that was oppressive and unjust. We've seen the profession and the belief that all humanity is created in the image of God. This candidate provides a public way for the church to embrace the gifts of Blackness. So there was the Venerable Pierre Toussaint, was born as a slave in Haiti in 1766 to the Berard family. And he was trained as a house slave and educated by the family tutors. The Berard family brought Pierre with them to New York as they fled from an uprising rebellion of slaves and free people of color. In New York, Pierre apprenticed as a hairdresser. And when Jean Berard died, Pierre stayed on with Berard's wife. Pierre married Juliette Noel, um, a slave whose freedom he purchased. Together, they adopted Pierre's niece after his sister died of tuberculosis. The Toussaints used the income Pierre made from his successful career to support the local orphan asylum and often brought them baked goods. Their generosity extended to opening up their own home to orphans in foster care, supporting them in education and learning a trade. He was a friend to refugees and immigrants from Haiti, helping them to establish income. Pierre's faith was an important part of life. He attended daily mass and helped raise the money to build St. Patrick Cathedral in New York, as well as the first New York City Catholic school for Black children. Pierre was a philanthropist and a founder of many Catholic charitable works. Then we have Mother Mary Lang, and you'll hear her referred to as Elizabeth, her birth name. She was born in 1784 in a Haitian community in Cuba. She immigrated to the US in the early 1800s, eventually settling in Baltimore, Maryland, where the free African American population was rapidly growing. A bliss and to an opening for schools in her educate African American children. She assisted a French priest, and you'll see that we've always needed each other. There's a codependency on each other to see each other and to address each other's needs. So Father Nicholas Joubert, in his need to teach the catechism to children who struggled with reading, so she assisted him, and together they agreed to start a school for girls and founded a religion order. The order, the Oblate Sisters of Providence, was the first religious congregation of women of African descent in the US. Elizabeth took the name Sister Mary and became the order's first religious superior. Together, Sister Mary, 4 other sisters, founded a school later known as St. Francis Academy, which is still in operation today. Many people know about Sister Francis Academy from Sister Act, which Whoopi Goldberg was in, but that actually existed and is still in operation today. Sister Mary Lang died on February 3rd, 1882, at the age of 98. Despite fighting against racism and poverty, the Oblate Sisters evangelized the Black community through Catholic education, including classes for women and career training. They also established homes for widows and orphans and aided the sick during the cholera epidemic. And so when there is, and you'll find a lot of these, when there are like epidemics and plagues that are affecting a whole community, people can find purpose. And that's what Sister Mary Lang did. And when there was a need for education, because you cannot advance yourself without education, she found her purpose there. There's a venerable Henriette DeLille. She was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, where she lived all of her life. She was determined to help those in need for the love of Jesus and for the sake of the gospel. Henriette's parents were united as part of a plaquet system wherein European men in common law were put in common law marriages with African Americans and Creole women. Henriette was trained in French literature, music, and dancing with the expectation that she would become herself part of the plaquet system. But instead, Henriette rallied against the plaquet system and was drawn to the Catholic Church. She began teaching at a Catholic school when she was 14, caring for and educating the poor. This educational work led her to find a small congregation of nuns named the Sisters of Presentation, and together the group of Creole women cared for the sick and the poor and educated both free and enslaved children and adults. They also opened America's first Catholic home for elderly. In 1837, the religious order received formal recognition, and in 1842, they changed their names to the Sisters of the Holy Family. So many people know about Sister Holy Family Institutes. The sisters' legacy includes caring for the sick during the yellow fever epidemic and running parochial schools. They remain active today. Henriette died in 1862 at the age of 49. Father Augustus Tolton is desired to be a priest, but was rejected by every American seminary. Father McGurr, again, you see that relationship, continued to advocate for him, and eventually Augustus was able to study in Rome. So not in America, he had to go to Rome. He was the first Roman Catholic priest in the United States publicly known to be Black. And in 1886, at the age of 31, Augustus was ordained a priest. His first public mass, so 5 years later, was in the St. Peter Basilica on Easter Sunday in 1886. So job well done. And he had to wait for his platform. But St. Peter Basilica, that's not a bad place to have your first mass. So we have Julia Greenlee. We only have two more. Julia Greenlee was born into slavery in Hannibal, Missouri. When she was only 5 years old, she was permanently injured. Her eye was permanently injured by a slave master's whip that he was using on her mother. She was freed under the Missouri Emancipation Act of 1865. She took employment as a cook and a nanny. So real basic need, food. And again, she was injured at the age of 5 under the conditions that she was born into. But what did she do with that? Julia subsequently earned her keep by serving white families in Missouri, Denver, Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico. Her faith was so strong that she walked streets distributing information from the Most Sacred Heart League in Denver, Colorado, all the while quietly suffering from painful arthritis. Julia was known for her little red wagon, which she pulled through the streets of Denver at night, distributing food, coal, and clothing to needy families. Julia did her charitable works under the cover of darkness so she wouldn't embarrass those accepting charity from a poor Black woman. In 1901, Greenlee joined the secular Franciscans, and in recognition of her dedication to the poor, Greenlee has been dubbed Denver's Angel of Charity. And the most well-known candidate for sainthood right now is Sister Thea Bowman. She was born in 1937 in Mississippi. Her grandfather was a slave, her father was a doctor, and her mother a teacher. With their permission, Thea converted to Catholicism when she was 9 years old and later joined the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration in Wisconsin as the only African American member. Sister Thea played a tremendous role in publishing the Catholic hymnal, Lead Me, Guide Me, the African American hymnal. Within the hymnal was an essay written by Thea wherein she wrote, Black sacred songs is soulful songs. Immediately before her death, Thea spoke to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and during the conference, a very ill, frail Sister Thea sung the song, Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. The song is an expression of pain and despair as the singer compares their hopelessness to that of a child who has been torn from their parents. At the conclusion of the presentation that she gave that day to the Conference of Catholic Bishops, the majority of them being white, they all stood with their arms linked as Thea led them in the spiritual, we shall overcome. Sister Thea died of breast cancer on March 30th, 1990, at the age of 52. So I felt that, we need to connect our past, our history with the present, the need for continued works, the need to live with a purpose. And I just wanted to remind everybody, of the Kwanzaa principles that represents the values of our African culture that helps us build and reinforce our community among African Americans. We reference Umoja, which is unity, to strive and maintain unity in the family, community, the nation, and race. There's Kuji Shakalia, which is self-determination. Ujima, which is collective works and responsibilities. Ujama, which is cooperative economics. Nia, which is purpose. Kuuma, which is creativity. And Imani, which is faith. All of these things are principled. All of these things are needed, not just in us as African American. It's only when you're stripped from things and deprived of things that you have to go back to the core of what your purpose is, what your existence is for, and what's going to maintain you that is within your own control, that does not come out from external, from each other. And so I think that when we share our stories, that even though this is coming from a context of the African American story, those are principles that all of us need. And many of us have plights in our life, in our communities. Everybody's not American, have an American story, American obstacles. But, women as a body have had these things happen to them too. And no matter where you're at in the spectrum of life, whether you're in the spectrum of being able to reach and give to another person, whether it be of the same race, a different race, same gender, different race, same gender, different gender, whether it is of a different age group, when we see each other and when we sit with each other's experience and when we grow from each other's experience and when we learn that telling the truth in our story doesn't present a threat. And I would hope that in this presentation, that those that are African Americans can take pride from it. Those who are not African American can see that there is no threat. And those people who were directly impacted by the adversity, that they understood what they were undergoing or what they were experiencing. They themselves knew it was wrong. They knew they were fully human. They knew their gifts and talents. They knew that they were deprived and that they may not be able to do it for a system. But it all links up to they did the best they could with what they had in the times that they were living in. It was not in a spirit of anger. It was not in a spirit of retribution, but it was a spirit that allowed a chain to be formed in which now, when they hand off and they take their last breath, can be handed to the next generation. Sow the seeds, and that we don't get anywhere on our own. And so there's always been people who have helped us along our way in the same race, outside of our race, and in that humanity and in that act, they took risks themselves in a world that doesn't want to see change. In a world that does not want that narrative, it doesn't want that cohesiveness among people for us to live in unity. So I say to everyone, live with purpose, take pride in your heritage, because my gifts that I have don't come from the gifts that I have. The person and the woman who I am today clearly comes from my African American parents, but it also comes from in the Catholic community. I have many soulmates that are of different races and ethnicities, and it's in their sharing of their self. I can only present to you who I am, how my ancestors lived in the world. That should not be perceived as a threat to anyone. It should be of encouragement to all. And it should be an opportunity for us all to build community. So again, take pride in your own heritage. Allow me to take pride in my heritage. Know that saying Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that other people matters. It's only when people try to take the history from a people to not only show negative images and not the contributions, that it becomes a need. And in a better world, we won't need to have Black History Month, and we won't need to say the Black Lives Matter. We know that all lives matter. A healthy you is essential to maintaining healthy families and communities. So follow your passion. Each one of these people, whether it was education, whether it was feeding, whether it was caring for the elderly, they followed their passion. So that's where you'll find your purpose in following your passion. Allow your circumstances, whether harm has been brought to you or not, allow your circumstances to guide the course of your life. Allow your faith to provide the spiritual freedom and the peace of mind that we all need and the dignity that we all need. Live responsibly, find your purpose and issue of your time, and understand that every person is every person is taking a risk, and that your small acts matter, and they give the opportunity for change to have major changes to take place in our society. That's what I have to share with you for today.
Wow. That's awesome. My goodness. Thank you so much, Miss Catherine, for that whole, oh my goodness. We need, if you don't mind, I would really like the list of, what you just shared with us, if you don't mind, because as I was listening to you, what kept coming to my mind was, so how come we don't know all of this? Well, how come I don't know all of this? Because I don't know who knows, but I have to be honest and say that I've been in the United States now for 20 years. And I've encountered, I know my whole focus in healing, health and healing and all of that. And of course, my faith as a nun and who has really shared life in different parts of the world before coming to the United States. And when I arrived here, maybe my expectation was too high. I was expecting to see equality, see where everybody comes with what they have, who they are, to build the whole nation. In fact, that was my whole notion before I came. Needless to say that I got disappointed. When I came and what I heard and my reality was different. And I was like, wow, so really what happened? Not until a few years ago, I went to one of the seminars, and I think one of the universities, I wouldn't like to call names, and that was, I think it was also in February. We have this wonderful Black woman from New York. She specializes in philosophy, history, and stuff like that. And she presented to us. So she wasn't really medically inclined. Okay. But something she said that really shook me to my foundation was, I'm a midwife, as you know. And there are instruments we use, for examining women and stuff like that. And she said, did you know that she mentioned that instrument, that it was discovered by a Black person? Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is a hall full of hundreds of people. And I'm like, what? Because in my country, in England, all over the world, nobody is somebody else's name. In fact, it was that person that was named after the instrument. Wow. So I raised my hand up and I'm like, are you telling me that this person that has this name of this instrument was not the founder? She said, no. I'm like, wow. Yeah, so I don't know. I couldn't really describe how I felt at that spot, but it just says a lot about what you're just sharing now. That why would we not feel comfortable? Like you share who you are and I share the gift I bring. And that's what I feel builds all of us. Absolutely. Builds our community, builds our nation. But when we start feeling like the other person is a threat to me, which is not really founded, because some of these things are unfounded actually, that's where that fear comes in. When you have fear comes, a way to really terminate the other person, a way to bring them down. And that's what happens. And I can see that also as a human nature. But as we live in a developed world, one would expect better, but that hasn't happened. But I think, like you rightly pointed out, that we're all learning, but we all know that each one of us has been endowed with a whole lot, and nobody has it all. No. When we collaborate, that's when we, They said, I think they said few hands or more hands make the dream work or something like that. So when people come together with that good intention, everybody benefits.
Everyone.
And that's, yeah, and I think that's what the message you're sharing with us today, because when you listen to that whole history, what we are today came from what you just shared with us. You know, all people did was just add to it, make it better in their own time with what is obtainable at their own time. So there are a few things I jotted down as you were speaking before I open it up for other people to make comments or ask questions. You're talking about handing to the next generation. So my question is, when you look at what is going on today, I can hardly actually name one thing that has been discovered in the past 20 years that I say to myself, okay, this is what we're going to be handing over to the next generation. It really bothers me as a person to ask myself, what actually have I done? What have I given to this whole world? I have really enjoyed what other people have taken their time, spend their energy to really provide to me. Now, question is, what am I leaving behind for the next generation? So I was just wondering, what do you think right now, as we enjoy all these gifts, that other people who were in the position of offering themselves, being generous enough to say, here, this is my contribution. How do we really address this whole concern, which I know you are aware of and everybody's aware of, that we have become a consumer, freak society, and we're not even thinking about what the next generation will inherit from us. Do you have any thoughts on that, especially as you've shared with us what our Black sisters and brothers, what they have done, the contribution they made those days, where they were able to go through all odds to make an impression?
So I think that where I would, well, at least if we're keeping this, framing this from the United States, we're making so many inroads right now, but it's in a combative environment. So like we're considered to be like a really big threat right now. So one of the things you were saying, I think, unfortunately, so much is about power, right? And when you in the power, when you're power driven, that's in the here and now. That's not about the next. So many people are not worried about how the earth is going to be for the next generations. They're not worried about financial gains in the next generation. So we're combating that while still trying to establish that we have self-worth. We're trying to, but what I do see is I see different things like when COVID came, I did see that when things weren't being distributed in our communities, I did see like nursing associations and doctors that in other cities that were coming and stopping that pipeline that was the gap into getting it into the communities. I see politically where right now this socially, when you talk about even in your field, and this is like for women, we know that, and I'm not going into any negative, but like women, when we talk about the reversal of Roe versus Wade and the abortion, but we know that there are many states where there's no OB-GYN doctor, there's no cure. And so, coming into those areas to care about women, to make sure that they even have, outside of that subject matter itself, but the whole thing about, giving birth to a child should not be something that is a threat to the woman's life. But if you live in an area where there's no OB-GYN doctors and there's whole communities, So, that distribution. So people are getting involved with, I think, through politics, because that's the biggest thing that is making decisions right now. Whether you're talking about in the health field, whether you're talking about in the financial market, Medicare, they're changing regulations to make sure that it's not meant to and skewed towards a certain population being able to have access to things, and then people who live in a population where they're underserved and would not have that portfolio of things, that they would not be able to have the same access to resources. So right now, it just seems like what we're doing is just trying to what I see being done, whether we're talking about medical, financial, um, wealth building, education. Um, Everything is financially driven right now. You have to have money to do things. They try to change the access to education, what's in school systems and everything else. So I think that really right now, and then also I think that we're using the medium of, like you're doing Zoom, but computers, and the social media, as well as this news reporting. So I think that one of the things that I see being done is giving the Black perspective, and getting the accomplishments and the works, and the harms, the whole full message being able to be out there in the news. So that's one thing I see. Um, we are still doing things. It's just not going to be reported. And again, we don't want to have to undig it in order to bring it out for people to know what's being done in today's age. It's being done. Um, it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah. Yeah, and I think what you're saying is that really makes a lot of sense. And what I worry about is, since right now we have this whole platform, the so media, to everybody tries to trumpet what they do, who they are. I just feel that we as Black people also have to take advantage of this whole platform, and let people know, like what you're sharing with us tonight. Honestly, I don't know how many schools are teaching this to kids. I don't know how many, not only schools, I don't even know any healthcare setting that will have the time, or even give people the opportunity to learn some of this. And last year, no, a few years ago, just before COVID, I was working in a health, care place that I wouldn't like to talk about name, but I met with a whole lot of people during February. They were putting all those, some prominent people, Black people, on the walls. So I got curious because they were doing this, and it was interesting. The person who was putting this was a white woman. So I got curious and I was talking to her. I started, to engage in conversation, and wanted to ask her questions for what she was doing. You know what I mean? And the way she responded didn't correspond with the activity, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh, I don't know really that I will do something that I don't believe that much. That later I realized that she was doing it because that was part of her job description.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, you did this. I left it for the whole month. You didn't even talk to anybody about it. We were just looking at the, looking at the walls. Someone
Checking.
like, yeah.
I'd say just checking off the box, because I work with the
Exactly.
system and they wanted me to be involved. And it's like, and what I told them is that if you belong to the group, whatever the ethnicity or whatever the circumstances, if you're part of the affected community, your desire to see change is not just to check off a box so that we can say we had that discussion, or to say, but it is to apply it in principles so that it can be um, actually implemented, or that people can grow and become more comfortable with the subject matter, and we can just keep on expanding upon it, but not just to give a training and then not see it in principle or in practice actually there, or accountability, anything that's measurable come out of it. Having that language, it's cute. Many times it's cute, but and I would to put my energy into it, to know that, I'm just helping you basically put a poster or make a poster, or do a quick training session for 5-10 minutes that everybody has to listen to, and then say that they listened to it, and then not to see it actually physically in the workplace be something that, that was measurable, was not an interest of mine. And I think that's a difference, of really wanting to have change. So yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you just mentioned that, because honestly, if we're doing things that is not coming from our heart, which really bothers me, and I get mesmerized, because looking at or listening to the history of the Black history, this has been going on for the past 400 years. And honestly, I can't humanly phantom being allergic or being resistant to something for 400 years, if you know what I mean. I'm like, okay, so for how long more are we gonna really resist this before we really say, wow, you know what? We've come to a point where we can say, let everybody be, let us be. And the other question I have for my brothers and sisters, the Black folk, is how can we start identifying ourselves with our heritage and say, and everything is not money. Honestly, I know money speaks. You cannot do a whole lot without money. And I know that even from this organization that I'm running, that is a nonprofit, it hasn't been easy. But I also believe that everything is not money. Like what you and I are doing right now, we were not paid to do it. So my question and challenge to our folk is, how can we be proud of who we are? Which other platforms can we start, to just share our heritage in such a way that it continues to be our heritage and not just what we do 30 days in February, or 28 days, or even not up to 30 days, 28 or 29 days in February. So what would you like to share, something that we could be doing, like you in the church? This is what you offer to do. Other people might not see it as something big, or you might not even see it as something big, but that is something.
I think I would say that, what the biggest thing what I'm finding, because again, I'm not the person who's a scholar, but what I find is that the best way that you can do is you can create a culture. And first, you have to educate yourself. You have to learn. That's free, because the internet is free. Many books are, you can, but then it's through conversation with other like-minded people, and you will see that in any race. And I think it's accepting invitations, and sitting with each other, and talking about things. And so I find myself to have power, that my power is my relationships that I have with people. And when you migrate towards other people to have the same energy, the same passion, the same concerns, and then you build community, and then you go across links. Like we had a whole prayer vigil, and that came out of my relationships with other people. And, I believe you just pick up the phone and you call people. Once you meet people, you keep in communication, you keep relationships with them. And then, so we had, the first Black priest, Father Taylor, and we had at that time it was Deacon Hawkins, that he was getting ready to become the second priest in the Pittsburgh, African American priest in the Pittsburgh Catholic diocese. And we just partnered with other groups that were really interested, and we had that whole Freedom Corner just covered with people that came. We had African drummers, and we read the names, and this was all through. But what we did was we brought our faith, Black Lives Matter. We didn't have a desire to riot. when that was happening, because this is around the time when George Floyd had been killed. But our response to that was to bring our faith to it and bring our community to it. And so in a very public way. And it was such a beautiful, intense thing. Now, my biggest challenge is how do you keep that level of intensity, and what do you do next? And that's where I find it hard, is that, is to keep it going and to keep that energy moving forward, because it's not just about getting a thrill for a day, but because, you gotta, and that's what I think that through the saints is that the reason why they're saints is because they did it daily. They did it until their death, right? And how do we keep that momentum going? That it's not just a one-off, and then, oh, that was nice, and then.
I know. Yeah, right. And what you just said right now ties into the next thing I was going to say, and that is perseverance and courage. People not really giving up, because it's very easy to give up. Very, very easy. We have a fast-paced society where everything is kind of happening at the same time, and everyone wants to get every bit of thing going on. So something got to give anyway. But
you got to keep talking. You got to keep on talking and keep having a conversation.
Exactly. And that's that was going to be my next thing. I'm like, okay, so this conversation we're having now, February, how are we going to keep it going so that this time next year, we're going to look back at this, conversation we had tonight and say, wow, this is what we talked about. And here, this is all we have achieved since that time. No matter how little that is. I'm speaking this, to our audience as well. And I'm talking to Black, white, brown, green, and whoever that is part of this country. We are all in this together. I'm going to give example of the nonprofit organization, Zita's Healthy Beginnings. On the 6th of February was 7 years we started this organization. And all it was about was trying to support women and children, reduce the maternal and infant mortality rate that is really sky high in the United States of all nations. And when you come to the USA, it's worse in the minority group, and that is Black population. So, and I have tried, my own level best to see how we can get our population to be aware of this and see collectively how we can resolve the situation or reduce the incident. And I think at this point, I'm also asking you, knowing that you have that whole connection, see how you can help me so we can help our women and children through family connection. Because this is, for me, this is the way to go. And we got to do this step by step. Every day we do little by little by little and not give up hope. And I'm so glad that you took this opportunity to share this wealth of information, which I know most of us are not aware of. And for me, this is the beginning of a wonderful journey into being who we are, really reclaiming our heritage and sharing it with the world, because we are just talking here in the United States, but I know with this platform, it's going across the globe. So I'm glad. I know this is just the beginning. It's just the beginning. So we're running out of time, but I'm going to open it up to our audience. Does anyone have any questions, please, for Ms. Catherine before we wrap it up?
I thought it was all very interesting. And thank you, Catherine, for coming on.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Emily, for your comment. Dr. Emmanuel, you have something to add?
Yeah, Ms. Catherine Winslow, thank you so much for such an insightful, presentation. In fact, after listening to you, kind of put to me that I'm still, not aware of what the Black History Month stands for, and what a lot of Black folks have done in the past. I really agree with you because when we are told that medicine we practice here started in Africa, but the Western world took it and championed it. Nobody ever remembers that they all started in Africa. The medicine. That's why we call the Hippocratic oaths. So a whole lot of things, have really, happened, and we have some Black heroes. Unfortunately, are not being celebrated, not being, recognized. But it's something that is worth, bringing up. I'm so glad that you have this information, and I'm sure all across the world, most people don't know about these things. But I'm so proud of you, making this, effort to go deep searching and bringing out information that are in the archives. These are things that posterity need to, see, and know where we all came from, where we're going. So very important. Thank you so much for such a wonderful, presentation. It's very insightful and so very, very educational. Thank you so much. I appreciate your presentation. And thank you, Zita. Thank you for your Emily Goma. Thank you so very much. Thank you for your consistency and tenacity. Very wonderful in this program. So you all have a wonderful evening. I love you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Love you
Dr.
too.
Emmanuel. Yeah, there's a saying in my culture, just to close, there's a saying in my culture that if you do not blow your trumpet, nobody else would. And I'm going to leave this to our brothers and sisters from the Black heritage. And thank you again, Miss Catherine, for coming. And please let us learn to blow our own trumpet. Amen. Because nobody else would do it. And we are the people we've been waiting for. Thank you. Please, you're going to have to come again. Join us every Tuesday if you can at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we're so glad for this platform that is brought to us by the podcast, Disability Channel, and the Transform You Network and Park. So we're grateful for the opportunity they're giving to us to share with our audience, bringing them information that you cannot find anywhere else except right here. So thank you for coming, and have a blessed week. And for our audience, thanks for listening. For those who are going to be replaying this, we will hope that you find this very informative, like we did, and do something about it. Thank you all, and have a wonderful night. Stay safe. All right.
Recording stopped.
Great. That was awesome.
Was it? Okay, thank you.
Yes, it was awesome. Oh my goodness. Yes, I've never heard. These are the kind of stuff you don't even learn from anybody, in any classroom. Yeah, any class.
In my life, the reason I found the study of the saints to be important for me. One, why to stay within the Catholic Church. That's number one, because I feel like they have all the capabilities to be in the doctrines, to be something greater. And then when I see the inconsistencies, how do I process that? How do I process that? How do I process this world? And so it keeps me from me understanding that every generation has something at a time. And if this is the way the Lord brought me into the world as an African-American woman in these times, then this is my cross to bear. And how do I do it peacefully? How do I do it joyfully? How do I do it without, allowing my presence to be diminished, or the value that others place on me to be my ceiling or my limitation? So we know that that's not the portion that God has for me. I did want to say to you that I could give you a link to, because when you said what to do next, because there is a petition to advance it, because the Pope can do anything. You can write a letter to the Pope, but you can also sign a petition for the saints to get moved on, because that's, it has to get a certain level before they will move along. And they have the ability to single-handedly just advance them all if they wanted to. So, the more people that are there, they can just, push for these. And because every culture needs to see images of themselves to know, it just has to happen. It has to happen. And so these certainly are people that, exhibit it and are worthy of it. And there's been people, those people were born in the 1800s. There's people who have passed away not too long ago that have made it to sainthood already. So it is an American thing that these people are having such a hard time to become a sainthood. So one, we have to make sure people are aware of them, and two, that there's an opportunity for them to participate in towards requesting that, that their lives, get pushed forward in terms of, I noticed some of them, I said, were venerable. That's all stages of sainthood. And there's different stages they have to reach before they're called saint. So.
Yeah, that's really very helpful. The other thing I also let people know when we talk about sainthood and stuff like that, because I come across all kinds of faith, and no faith, with people who are just there. One thing I try to let people know is that you have a gift to give to the world, and you must do that. However you feel, any opportunity you get, go ahead, do it. Because yes, the Catholic Church, this is how they set it up. These are all man-made. This whole thing is man-made, So it can be very discouraging, especially talking to the young people. I mean, some of them have asked me, oh, by the way, sister, you're telling me that it will take this whole, period, and it's going to take this amount of money, because we're talking about money. Nothing happens without money. So, and they're like, okay, so what if you don't have money? What if you don't have anybody who's going to, kind of say, yes, this person needs to be canonized or something? What if, and what if, and what if? And all of this what if is making them really get so biased and not really have that spirit to do something good. And I keep telling
they feel like they're facing an insurmountable.
Exactly.
So therefore, they lose their motivation to even attempt to. It's like, well, nothing's new happening now. It's been 400 years, and it's just kind of digged into the DNA of our country. And so, this is
not only our country, it's the world. It's the world as a whole. And that's one thing I have a problem with our church, because honestly, we are dealing with a different race right now, a different culture right now. We are dealing with people who are thinking differently. And how do you really bring people like this to faith, to our faith, to the faith that has been passed down to us? Because they don't think the way we think anymore. So how do you tell them to please keep doing what you're doing is good? It doesn't have to end by, canonizing you or doing this or following this whole tradition. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't follow their tradition, but what I'm trying to say is that it's hindering us, because we're going to have people who will really take care of us or take over from us, just like you and I are here today talking about those people in the 18th century. Who is going to tell our own story? If we are not like playing the kind of game these people can understand and identify with, if we're going to be putting them back into all that has happened 400 years ago and sticking to it, what good are we really doing to them and to ourselves? Right. That's where I have my issues, with the church. But regardless,
we have to say something simple like, well, when you changed, then it's not the same conversation, right? So like, when you make a shift, it's a shift in the dynamic, and and we always know that when you're closest, that's when you get the most discouraged, when you're close to something. So, and we know the devil's real, so he's going to make you feel. But if you feel convicted that what you're saying is truthful, then you have to keep beating that drum. You got to keep saying it and saying it and saying it. And sometimes God is moving different things so that, and that's what I have that at St. Benedict Moor. I keep saying and saying and saying. I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I'm starting to connect with more and more people, that have the same energy and the same intensity and the same concerns. And I never know when what I say is actually going to strike the right balance. I have a desire that we're going to bring a revival in the next year or two to St. Benedict Moor, and it's bigger than what the leadership right now is even thinking about it. And I can even see how God is lining it up, and it's inside church and outside of the church, and it's through relationships like this. And I see it happening. I mean, because they so thinking so small-minded, and I'm like, no. But I think what we have to realize is that everybody has to have a skin in it, whether they're our race or not. Because when we blossom and we boom and we are ourselves, we're going to bring more talent, skills, ability. We're going to bring more joy, and a lot of people want to have that same level of joy and intensity. But if we can be oppressed and we can radiate and shine, then imagine what people who don't have that obstacle in their life, what they will be able to accomplish. And, when I just truly, truly believe that we are at a time where this conversation that we're having in the world is giving birth to something. But if we just don't tire out and we just keep on having that conversation and keep pushing, because there's when you see the marches and things like that, you see it becoming more universal. And I think that's what the fear of certain people who want power is, because they see the multicultural people starting to buy into this, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, this is problematic. So they're trying to, polarize us by making us again think ill of each other or discourage us.
Right, exactly.
But anyway, whatever happens, it's God's will for our time. And whether we see, whether, like Martin would say, whether we see the promised land or whether we see it happen in our time, we got to keep on pushing that effort, so that even if it doesn't happen in our time, that somebody else will pick up the work. We don't ever know who's observing us,
Exactly. Yeah, that's very important. So just shine our light. That's all we have to do. We must, because each one of us has got their light. We must shine it. And together, once each person brings their light, it's going to really shine, so the darkness has no chance. So thank you so much. This is
You're welcome.
Conversation, and we'll keep.
Sorry, Emily.
That's all right.
I'm listening to her. I'm like, I feel so bad. But
No,
we'll take it offline.
That's her job.
That's her job. Okay.
Yeah, that's her job. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, so
all jobs have to come to an end. The workday has to come to an end. I'm an FMLA specialist, Family Medical Leave Act. That work life balance. Emily, I got you. All right, dear people.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, bye. I will send you the link. That way you can also share with a circle.
Okay.
Replay link. The replay.
All right.
Link. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
You
Bye.
too.
Have a good night.